Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ian Kavat. Today we delve into Xi Jinping's reconciliation diplomacy, marked by his meetings with Japan's Fumio Kishida, South Korea's Yoon Suk-yeol and the Philippines' Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the recent Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. Joining us today are Raymond Sung, National Chengchi University Professor of Political Science, and Raymond Sung, Vice President of Taiwan think tank, the Prospect Foundation. A very warm welcome to the show today. On the sidelines of APEC, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida held a one-hour meeting. Xi urged Japan to maintain its commitments for stable Sino-Japanese relations in relation to Taiwan. At the same time, US President Joe Biden invited Kishida to visit next year. And Kishida met Taiwan's representative TSMC founder, Morris Chang. Professor Yan, let me come to you first. So, what do you think both leaders' aims were going into the meeting between China and Japan?
Okay, first of all, I think, with the meeting of Xi and Biden, I think the stage is set to have just like you mentioned, more like a reconciliatory kind of approach to regional powers for Beijing leaders. So this is an important meeting because when they met last year, this has been almost 1 year, and the relationship somehow, I think, worsened, especially if you consider a year ago, Xi Jinping just assumed his position as the third term president of China. So he has consolidated his power, but this year, look, he has his foreign minister and his defense minister, both are not there anymore. So people began to question his judgment of naming, all these cabinet members. But also, I think the Chinese economy really slowed down. So he has to do something. In China, there is always an argument that the most important thing for China is to maintain stability. So anytime you have a higher unemployment rate among the youth, you have a slower economic growth, and then people look at your leadership, the hierarchy of the leadership appears to have some problem. So it will hurt the regime stability. I think Xi Jinping is trying to take a proactive position approaching U.S. and approaching regional countries so that maybe the economy can be improved, especially trading with U.S. and Japan. I think that will help.
Raymond, that's interesting because last year Xi Jinping, beginning his third term, spoke about placing security above the economy, which was a change. Yes. So is there now a little bit of a regression here? He's now refocusing on the economy.
I think during the past several months that China witnessed its stagnation of its economy, and the problem got worse and worse with no prospect of getting better soon. And of course, the mark of Xi Jinping's diplomacy around APEC this year was to lay down the harsh mask and take a reconciliatory approach to try to attract more foreign investment into China and to boost Chinese market. And of course, that's desperately needed for the domestic need of Xi Jinping. And also on part of Japan, I think in line with Japan's main partner in the United States, the face-to-face meeting with Xi Jinping personally is important for them. And because actually the leadership been witnessing some changes recently in China, and it's really important to know who can you talk to, given that the foreign minister and the defense is being removed by Xi Jinping. So the personal meeting with Xi Jinping himself, and to see at first hand how Xi Jinping performed, how is his health, and how is his interaction with his colleagues is important for them. And of course, and outside of this and the real issues of tensions between the two about the military threats and security concern, about release of Japanese held by China, and also the import ban imposed by China against the Japanese seafood. And those are being put for further another day. So the reconciliation and to try to contact and build a person-to-person diplomacy is the key words.
Professor Yan, would you agree with Raymond's analysis there that, the focus was very much on stability, on the economy, and those thorny issues, Taiwan's Senkakus or Diaoyutai Islands, these were agreed by both sides to be put for a later date, or maybe experts to discuss this. Let's talk about the post-summit statements by both sides. I mean, essentially, they both agreed to find solutions, especially to the Fukushima water discharge, through dialogue. China stressed that that they wanted to focus on common interests, and interestingly, Xi said that he wanted to reaffirm the strategic relationship between the two.
Okay, now in China, when it has closer relation with some of the countries on its camp, we know it's different than the U.S. U.S. always has we call treaty relationship, right? A security kind of like a commitment from its treaty partners. China doesn't have that. China always have what we call strategic security partnership, but Japan will not be a partner. So China basically is saying we are sharing strategic interests. It's not the level of China with other countries, but at least China is saying to Japan, I think both countries have some kind of strategic interest, common strategic interest, that they need stability in the region. They need to have a more conducive environment for trade. Okay, environment conducive for trade, so that they can both grow. I don't think if you look at all the reports that nobody expect anything substantial right now. But I think creating an atmosphere that both sides can talk, that's more important.
Yeah, so the theme very much on dialogue. Raymond, Reuters pointed out that, in fact, the two sides also agreed to a very similar statement of, strategic, mutually beneficial relationship in 2008. But then, of course, since then, there has been any number of tensions. So what sort of likelihood do you think there is of having, a reaffirmed relationship, a warmer relationship going forward?
There are some structural obstacles to their relations between Japan and China, majorly on the area of security. And those are hardly to be removed, softened. If not, that China will take another different stance from its previous one, which is expansionist and threatening to taken out the status quo, especially with regard to creating the new status quo, new normal, to sending vessels and aircraft into the airspace and maritime spaces of Senkaku Islands, and also taking a very hostile attitude toward Japan on the issue of Fukushima release of waters. And of course, Japan to facilitate a mutual trade between them. So those are structural obstacles.
Professor Yan, another thorny issue, and Raymond has outlined quite a few there, obviously is Taiwan. Now, she said to Kishida that Taiwan is a principal issue in Japan-China relations, and that Tokyo must remain loyal to its position and ensure that the foundation of China-Japan relations is not shaken. What did he mean by this?
Well, I think she's meeting with any outside leader, foreign leaders, including President Biden, is to reiterate that Taiwan is the core issue, and then hoping first of all that the other side will again stress the importance of its one China policy, but most of the time they would like to say. Would like to have Japan or U.S. to oppose Taiwan independence. But so far, I think U.S. position is always not to support Taiwan independence, but to see some kind of a dialogue, peaceful relation across the Taiwan Strait. The importance of Taiwan for the Japanese security, which United States probably would not say that. But Japan, because it's so close to Taiwan and China. And I think China felt that this is not something they want to hear, that Taiwan is important or vital to the Japanese security.
Yeah, and becomes like a regional or global issue. And of course, we know that Kishida has been very strong in saying that there is that interconnection between the European and the Asian theatres. And he famously said East Asia could become, Raymond, the next Ukraine if China attempts to take Taiwan by force. Some commentators have said that the softening of Xi Jinping's attitude towards Kishida might be an attempt to drive a wedge between Japan and the US. Do you see it that way?
No, I don't see that, because if you take another look at the tremendous progress made in terms of building alliance between not only US, Japan, and also including Korea, the trilateral cooperation on security, and just in August, several months ago, the Camp David meeting. And those are diplomatic achievements being put on the regular meetings from the highest level to the foreign minister and defense minister level and to the working level. Those are not to be removed easily. And of course, the strategic stance of Japan has not been changed, including what the professor just mentioned, that a Taiwan contingency means a Japanese contingency for Japan, and which is on basis of geographical proximity, on the existence of Americans' military bases on Japan and Okinawa, and also on the very importance of the free and open access of Taiwan Strait, which is crucial for Japan's energy supply and trade. And those are the structural factors which are not changed. And also on the part of China, China has not relinquished its position to reserve its right to use of force in any in the very eventuality. So those are structural elements which are not going away soon.
Professor Yen, let's talk more about Taiwan. So Maurice Zhang, representing Taiwan, obviously President Taiwan cannot represent at APEC because of pressure from China. Now Maurice Zhang actually met with Japan's Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida. However, he didn't get to have a proper meeting with Joe Biden. What does that say about Japan's stance toward Taiwan?
Okay, I think, Maurice Zhang, even though he's retired, but everybody know his relation with TMC and his position in Taiwan in terms of all this semiconductors. So in a way, U.S. is trying to have Japan and Korea all follow Taiwan to invest more in the U.S. for its chips, right? But also Taiwan and Japan, even Korea as well, would like to have a more unified position here. So Maurice Zhang is being sought everywhere in the APEC, but especially for Japan. I think Japan want to have better cooperation with Taiwan in terms of semiconductor industry producing chips. So boost both position in the supply chain. I think that's very important for Japan as well.
And there's already a new fab being built in Japan.
Yeah, we sometimes we overlook. We always think of the Korean one and Taiwan, but overlook the Japanese challenge for the U.S. as well.
Raymond, Kishida Xi Jinping did meet with Kishida, and we said it lasted about an hour compared to, say, 4 hours with the US. But then for the summit with South Korea's Yoon Suk-yeol, this was a much shorter interaction.
Yeah.
So what does this say about priorities for Xi Jinping?
I don't know. Actually, I think, of course, the bilateral relations between Japan, China, Korea, China are different, of course. And of course, the interactions and the trade dependencies are quite different. And of course, on part of South Korea, Korea will be eagerly wanted to resume a better position of trade with China. And given that Chinese are still the biggest trading partner with Korea, and also On the other hand, although Korea has done tremendous work with the cooperation with Japan and the United States in building up the trilateral cooperations, and of course those are to meet the response to the regional security threats, especially from North Korea and its missile test threat posed by that. And given that view, and given taking into historical lessons that China's fierce response to the deployment of thought system, the terminal high altitude defense system to be operated in Korea in back to 2013, and of course the Korea wanted to get the best of both worlds to make trade relationship better with China, while strengthening its defense strategy and stance. Of course, China now is very different from China from 2013, and China doesn't has all the say into the bilateral relations with Korea. So I think that's more promising for Korea. And I don't think there's a different treatment between the two, because they are allies after all. And to prove that, actually, just after the APEC side meetings, both Kishida and Yoon held a joint conference appearance at Stanford, at Silicon Valley. They said about the cooperation in securing the clean energy supply and other innovative technology cooperation. So the relationship is getting very close and closer than previous decades for the both countries.
I agree with you that in a way China not driving a wedge between Japan and Korea, but driving a wedge between Yoon and his Korean business community. Because in a way, if you treated Korea a little, kind of differently from Japan, Kishida got more time, more substantial talk, and Yoon is more like a kind of like a diplomatic kind. And people would say, why Japan get a greater attention from Xi, and then maybe Yoon's approach fail, and he will have even lower approval rate at home. So forcing him to change policy. I think, I agree with you. There is some kind of wedge here, just to differentiate, or we call discriminate one against the other, just not for, the two relations. I agree with Raymond that Japan and Korea relation is not going to be shaken by this, especially with Yoon and Kishida's personal ties, I think very good. But between Yoon and his business community within Korea, that people would say, hey, your pro-America, your pro-Japan approach that is hurting us. After all, both Japan and Korea, their biggest economic trade partner is China, not the United States. I think for business community, they would like to see greater trade between, among the three.
Okay, now let's move, Raymond, to the meeting with the Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Again, this relationship obviously is fraught with tension, and Marcos was seeking obviously to reduce those tensions and also to restore the rights of access to his fishermen, essentially in their own exclusive economic zone. Now, one of the things that he said to Xi was, why don't we go back to how it was, where Chinese and Philippine fishermen can fish side by side in this area?
Yeah, that's also called for a change of policy on part of China, and that policy goes back to a decade now. And very harsh policy taken by China to say that the South China Sea's water is covered by China's jurisdiction in terms of regulating the access to resources there, especially in terms of fisheries and oil and gas resources. And of course, the incidents happened one by one, including interference with the Philippines fishermen's operation and interference of Philippines Coast Guard. And on the background that we see the Marcos Jr. Shifted its position to a more pro-US and pro-Japan stance. And actually on November the 11th, just around the time of their meetings, in San Francisco. Actually, there being an annual joint military naval exercise held by the United States and Japan with participation of Australia and Canada. And the Philippines, for the first time, has placed as an observer to that exercises. And of course, we have to remember the background that Japan granted its first permission and foreign defense assistance program to the Philippines in terms of providing Philippines Navy with coastal surveillance radar system and to assist the Filipino air defense force with the aerial domain awareness facilities. And those are because the two countries, Japan and Philippines, are facing the same shared security concern against China. And of course, Marcos Jr. also shared with their other allies to try to have a channel of talk directly to Xi Jinping to say, to at least let him to understand what the Philippine stance is. But to ease that on the ground tension, it takes more work, and especially the change of attitude on part of China in case of whether it's observed the award of South China Sea arbitration back to 2016.
So, Professor Yan, I mean, can we see this as Xi Jinping maybe seeing that it's China's actions that lead to those allies coming together, getting stronger? I mean, let me just quote you what Marcos Jr. Was asked after his meeting, and he was saying, look, nothing's going to happen, resolve very quickly. We have to keep talking. He said we have to continue to be candid with each other, and to be sincere in our desire to keep the peace. And I think that sincerity exists for all parties involved. Do you think Xi Jinping does genuinely want to reduce the tensions, or is this just talk on his part?
I think it's just talk. If you look at the picture, we just saw, you have broadcast here, Xi Jinping's meeting with Marcos, and compare that with Biden. I always told my student, politics is optics. Just presenting the picture, that's the most important thing. You see both, President Xi and President Biden walk, talk, and laugh together, and then Xi's just listening to Marcos, but without a very strong expression, and basically, and not even nodding there. So I feel that Xi Jinping said, okay, I understand what you are saying, but he's not going to say anything.
But I don't accept what you say.
Yeah, and this kind of side meetings compared to Xi's and Biden's, more like a summit meeting, by itself. Because if you look at that one, everything is choreographed, very perfectly. Because that's what China wants, but that's also U.S. want. So it presented a picture of a greater reconciliation between the two, and then with that, Japan and China look okay. But then you have this meeting with Marcos. I just see there is some kind of differences because Marcos just visited China earlier this year, and China thought that the two sides are getting along, but then something happened during all the summers. So China felt, I think, in the views of Beijing, like, hey, we just met. We thought we talked about this before, and then why are we having all these issues? So this is, Marcos is trying to, improve the relation. I think China is somewhat reluctant to do that now.
Raymond, so let's look on the perception of the US side. We've been talking about the Chinese side. So Xi Jinping obviously says that the US is trying to contain, encircle China. Do you think post-APEC, his view of US allied so-called encirclement, do you think this has softened?
I think his view, I don't know. I think it's from narrative of the Chinese state machineries and the pre-Biden-Xi summit. And they said there's a legitimate right of China and Chinese businessmen to grow and to prosper. And that's not to be treated being treated by discrimination and being treated by containment. But if you take a look at the G7 foreign ministers meeting, its immediate responses from G7 states is that nobody is content China. We want to prosper together with China, but we need to be candid. We need to be straightforward with China about our concerns, not only on the trade areas into China's unfair policies on trade and those stealing of intellectual properties, and very not legitimate detention of businessmen. Those are very worrying for the G7 state. And actually, if you think about the Indo-Pacific states, in Japan, Korea, the Philippines, everyone knows that China is the regional hegemony. There's no denial of that. But they are also thinking at what is a strong China means for them, especially taking into account the past 5 years' experience, when China's being boasted its strength militarily and economically, and they suffer military threats, a change of status quo, and economy security concern about intimidation and coercion. And those are they are really concerned. They say, we want to be prosper together with you. We know you are the big swan, and weak China is not good. It's not good for us as well. But there are some aspects you are not going to act in this way. If you are really change that, we can be on a even more conciliatory ground and be doing business with you. But you are not to be so expansionist and trying to take over Taiwan, which will be a huge change for the Indo-Pacific strategic calculation, and it will put Japan at the forefront of the Chinese threat, because China's ambition is not limited to Taiwan. And those are really what they are try to convey to China.
Okay. We'll have to end it there. Professor Raymond Sung and Raymond Sung, thank you so much for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.